Hey, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thrilled that you're here to join us today. I'm Justin Clifford. I work at Bereave. I'll be your host today. Loss Leaders is a program centered around how companies could and we think should step up when loss occurs in the lives of their employees. And the reason that we do these programs, we're on a mission to help companies provide the absolute best possible bereavement response when their employees suffer a loss. And in that pursuit, we get to meet people like Sarah, some incredible people that can bring so much education to businesses, to leaders that are really working to build a more compassionate and empathetic workplace. So instead of hogging them all to ourselves, we want to get them in front of you. The chat will be open today. The chat is open today for questions. We'll keep an eye on it. We're going to go for about 45 minutes past the hour, and we will have the recording sent out by the end of the week. Also, this program is SHRM PDC approved, and we'll provide the code at the end and in the follow-up email as well. I'm going to turn off the lo-fi beats that we got going on. My music control has been awful lately. Sorry about that. But the chat is open. Now, you're here for Sarah Hines. Sarah is the founder of Grief Advocacy, which is focused on cultivating healthy relationships with grief. She spent over 2.5 decades caring for the dying and the grieving in-home hospice, children's hospice, as a death doula, a coach, a speaker, trainer, facilitator, currently running a program called Leading Through Loss, which can be found on her site, Grief Advocacy. Easy for me to say, griefadvocacy.com. Sarah, welcome to Loss Leaders.
Oh, thank you. This is amazing. Thank you for creating the space for me and for everyone else.
Yeah, totally. We're honored and humbled to have an opportunity to do that for sure. Sarah, let's just start at the start where a lot of good stories begin. How did you end up choosing this line of work?
It's a little bit of a long but crazy story. I in all honesty, it really started with home hospice. So having watched a dear friend go through end of life with AIDS, so now I'm dating myself. Back when AIDS, was really unknown and there wasn't meds and the community was scared and families were scared, I was doing home hospice and. I kind of got into that work because of my friend and his experience dying alone. And the natural progression of that is to you wanting to go deeper and getting more curious about the work, and ended up working with children. But because of I was young then. I got a little bitter just watching wee ones go. And ended up focusing more on a sales career. So moved back into, technical software sales. So into the corporate world, but always kept my, my foot in this work. So I was always the one to run to the fire, and ultimately stayed and continued to do learnings and reading and working and certifications. And it ultimately led to this. So, I'm really grateful that the works accepted me as part of it, and it's wonderful to be inside of these last moments. So I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for choosing to do it. You currently have programs for HR teams, leaders, practitioners, including the Leading Through Loss online course that you developed that we mentioned at the start here. You've done a lot of work with HR leaders, and particularly in healthcare. Can you talk a little bit about why you developed the focus around the workplace?
Yeah, I think it's, having the experience, right, is always the caveat for activism or sponsorship or stewardship. You need to experience what it's like without it in order to know what it needs. And I lost my best friend back in 2015, quite suddenly. I was leading a sales team and it rocked my world. I can't really explain it in any other way. And when I kind of said, I got to go, I got to take care of this thing, the feedback from leadership was great. Make sure you get your stuff done before you go. And don't forget, because I was in sales, you have a quota to hit.
Mm.
Right. And it was the furthest thing from my mind.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But also, I just felt I guess the isolation around it, right? Because it wasn't a mom, it wasn't an aunt, it wasn't a grandparent, it was someone that wasn't part of that bloodline, that relation that they give bereavement for. And in that moment, the favor was that they were giving me time off. Right. But that didn't mean I didn't get, kind of cared for in those moments. So coming back in, it was like, sorry to hear about your friend, but did you do the report? Right. It was that kind of interaction. And so I just knew that it had to change. I knew that wasn't the way we grieved, because I had also spent all of this time inside of end of life care and trained as a funeral celebrant and a whole bunch of other things, but really wanted to change the way that experience specifically was for not only employees but for leaders inside of companies that preach, and I use that word perhaps a little too tightly, but that talk about really building a culture around being inclusive. What does that actually mean?
Right.
Grievers specifically. Yeah. So that's what really kind of fueled grief advocacy into that work. I think healthcare, it just so happened that I decided to kind of take this journey right before the pandemic. And I set up, I got all my stuff, all my ducks in a row, and long-term care and retirement homes were, customers of mine in the past, and desperately needed the work. So just started. So it didn't take long when you've got people that desperately need you and need care, actually, not me, but need care, right?
Yeah, totally. And you.
Really, that was really the caveat of what started grief advocacy.
Yeah, no, that's great. Can I come back to your experience real quick at the workplace? I'm curious. You were probably more grief informed than most people sitting in a technology sales role, people leader role, right? So you had a little bit of that awareness, but I'm thinking, like, in particular, your relationship with that particular job, as you got this response, you've got this grief, you've got this quota, you've got this team, you've got these responsibilities. Like, how did you start to navigate the job versus taking care of yourself and the people around you that were also grieving this loss?
Well, not well. I'm going to be honest with you, right? Not well. And certainly not the way I hope people do it today, right? Not the way that I would recommend back then. I think it was, let's just push it. Let's just push it aside and do what you need to get done, right? Do your best, because you can't lose your job. You got stuff, too much going on, right? I had wee ones, and how old were they? They were 5 and 7, right? So I had small children at home, and my husband was traveling. There was all of these things that were happening inside of our life that made you just say, no, bunker down and keep your head down and do the job. Follow the calendar, follow the dollars, right? Yes. And so it was really about ignoring the whole thing more so than it was actually holding on to the experience.
Yeah. So when you think about the workplace, and obviously you've got a massively different perspective, I think, than most people that are in the workplace that haven't experienced what you've experienced. When you think about the workplace, can you talk about why you think it is important to be able to respond in a supportive and compassionate manner to employees in these rough moments, outside of the fact that it's just like the human thing to do? Why is it important to be able to do that to you?
It's so important that I'm so glad you're going down this road because it's so important. Like I
Mhm.
didn't hit my quota that quarter.
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't hit my quota the quarter after,
Mhm.
right? And frankly, I didn't care.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Mm.
I knew I was doing the things I had to do. I think they call it presenteeism, right? I was
Mhm.
there but
Sure.
not there, right?
Mhm.
And I spent all of my energy um, shoving it down. It took all of the energy to ignore it that I had
Mhm.
no energy left to give to the
Yeah.
world, right? And when you're in that situation and you've got people saying, no, 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 I'm fine, there is always going to be people that need work to help them get through.
Mhm.
There will always be that, right?
Sure.
We need to honor that process for them, right?
Mhm.
But there will also be people that more so than not go back to work because they have to, not because they're healed,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So it's that fine balance that I think makes this work so very important for
Mhm.
organizations specifically, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
want people to thrive and to feel like they belong.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, if we take off the human part of this and we just put the business hat on for a second, it affects your numbers without question.
Sure.
There's lots of studies out there that talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So that I think in my mind, between presenteeism and the
Mhm.
actual financial implications of not caring
Mhm.
are significant enough.
Yeah.
I didn't make my year,
Yeah.
right?
Do you think there's with a better response, with a more compassionate, more well thought out response, do you think there is a world that would have allowed you to hit that? Or do you feel like at that point it's just kind of a lost cause to even want to try?
Well, I absolutely think there is.
Mhm.
I think that if I was able to sit and say to my team, I am not going to be able to hit my number this quarter. What can we do together that's going to help that? Right.
Mhm.
So being vulnerable or having a space where you know you can be vulnerable and say things
Mhm.
like that,
Sure.
right, out loud, and
Mhm.
have a culture where you have a team of people that actually can support you inside of
Sure.
that, right?
Sure.
Those are the things we need. Now, it doesn't come on the as a reactive implication of loss. It certainly is a proactive culture piece that needs
Mhm.
to be developed so that your employees can be vulnerable in tough moments, that
Mhm.
when your leaders have experienced loss, that they can actually be, listen, I'm not here. Can someone take notes for this meeting?
Mm. Yeah.
I can actually, because this is important to me, I'm in brain fog. If
Sure.
you take notes, I'm here and I'm doing the work, right?
Sure. Sure.
It's
You
just about teamwork, really.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're saying you're using the word teamwork. You're talking about having a supportive team environment, a supportive culture. Like let's talk about where I think yeah, I've referred to them as first responders in tough moments, which are the people managers, right? What do managers in particular, just as a baseline, right? Like they don't need to be experts, but as a baseline, what do they need to know about grief to be able to support teammates?
In my estimation and my humble experience, it never goes away.
Mhm.
It will never go away.
Mhm.
It will change, and we'll get better at being part of it, right? We'll be better. We'll build better relationships with it.
Mhm.
And as a leader, your responsibility is to be able to build a um, a a brave space for it,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
I love the idea of being able to be the conduit between bureaucracy, the
Mhm.
paperwork, like all the paperwork that typically has to be filled out, right? The insurance
Mhm.
documents are probably some of the most uncomfortable moments inside
Mhm.
of loss if you lose a spouse
Mhm.
specifically. How do you actually hold that as a leader and say, this is what I'm going to do? This is how I'm going to do it. And here are 3 things that I am going to reach back out to you and have a conversation with you about.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, the other important part is really the team around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often we say, oh, they take personal leave for family reasons and give no, so they're kind of lost in the wind going, what do we do now? We just do
Sure.
the job, right? We just fill
Right.
in the job. Someone should buy a card, right? Like it turns into this like really unknown piece. So being able to have a
Mm-hmm.
stable foundation
Mm-hmm.
that is standardized,
Mm-hmm.
allows for room for flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
is the best thing we can do as a leader.
Right. Right. Yeah. I love that. And Matt Trosky, friend of ours, is very experienced in this. He's actually going to speak in a couple of weeks with us. But he, like your situation, he's saying like people end up on a performance improvement plan because they're not viewed as productive, right?
Yeah.
And we've got story after story that either goes that route and somebody exits the business, or somebody remembers 10 months after a loss that that person might be going through something and is informed enough to say, hold on a second, and to be able to go into supportive mode. There are two paths in these situations, right? And it's the latter that is going to really support that empathetic and supportive culture. And I'm curious, when you think about like the progressive companies that understand a little bit about grief, enough about grief, versus the ones that have no idea, like what separates those companies? Like why are they so different in their ability to handle this? What's
the list,
that?
oh, the list feels so long.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing inside of corporate when it comes to bereavement leave is that no one knows what their actual policy is.
Mm.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
those that are a little more modern, a little bit more progressive actually know what their policy is when you ask,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the street, right? Like if you go to any HR leader and say, what's your HR policy?
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them know.
Sure.
Right. So I feel like a standard policy is
Mm-hmm.
important. One of the things that we typically see is, Jane over in marketing got 3 weeks leave because
Mm-hmm.
her manager really saw that she needed the support. But Anne over in accounting only got the standard 3 days because she seemed fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, is that on Jane and Anne to be able to communicate or is it on their leader to be able to create a space where they can have those conversations?
Sure.
Well, maybe it's both. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's probably one of the biggest differences I see is that they have a standard bereavement process, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm using that word specifically, not policy, but process.
Sure. Right.
And that process allows for accommodations.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I mean, there are so many instances in our world as well where the HR leaders don't know the policy, probably can't find it. Like these conversations happen, and listen, like I'm not throwing them under the bus here. It is just how, unfortunately, how part of society has unfolded. You're here to help change that. We're here to help change that. But inevitably, it's got to be resurfaced. We had one of our customers recently was on one of the first shows that we did. Emailed me afterwards and said, that was really inspiring. I just took over the chief people officer job a few months ago. I just pulled out our bereavement policy and I'm changing it right now. They are rolling out a new policy this week. Like huge win, right? Just because somebody there said, hey, something needs to change here, which was amazing. So grief in general, let's talk about grief. Like it's obviously tough, right? It's a moving target. It changes. It's different for everybody. People react to it differently. It shows up in different ways and different times. And one of the hardest things I think is like a colleague, like a teammate, is to try to understand what to say or what to do. We hear all these stories about people avoided me, right? I came back from a loss and people avoided me, or they said things that just were more hurtful than anything sometimes. And again, not trying to throw anybody under the bus. that's how we have evolved, and we're working to change that. But can you give a little bit of advice on maybe some things as a teammate to say or do to those people that might show that you're there to support them?
Oh, for sure. There's so many things. So first, words are always hard to find,
Mm-hmm.
right? And knowing that there are no words that are going to make anyone feel better is perhaps a little bit of permission, but and also a little bit of a release of expectation, right? One of my favorite lines is, words are impossible to find for me, but know I am here. And then actually showing up, right? Do you mind if I check in every now and then with you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That, in my estimation, is one of the realest, most honest connections you can make. But it really is nothing if we don't actually follow up.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So it's more about what you do rather than what you say.
Mm-hmm.
That said, a lot of horrible things are said to grievers, and they're the typical ones we hear inside of grief circles. At least you had time. You can always try for another. Why don't you get a new puppy?
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of those kind of, or love and light, sending you love and light. Call me if you need anything is probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Yeah.
I love.
Why is that? Why is that a pet peeve?
Oh, because what it does is it makes the person who's grieving, who's going through this really tumultuous experience, not only have to come up with what their supports should look like, they also now have to get the courage to call you. They also have to get the courage to ask, and they also, in that moment, have to maybe hear no, or hear, yeah, all right. Right. So this idea that I am here for you and I'm going to check in on you takes all the responsibility off the griever to interact with you and connect with you. That by saying that, you are actually taking ownership of support. So call me if you need me is giving the griever all the work to do and kind of wiping your hands of any responsibility, where when you say, I'm here and I'm going to check in on you, is actually taking responsibility for support.
Right.
That's one of the main ones for me.
Yeah, I love that. One of our previous guests is a good friend of mine, Max Yoder, and I talked years ago about giving people examples about what you can do. Like, instead of saying, call me if you need anything, it's, hey, I'm going to do something. Here are 3 things that people that, I don't know, let's use something celebratory. People that have a new baby might need. They might need a meal. They might need their lawn mowed. They might need transportation for their other child to school for a week. Which one of those things would you like me to do? Right.
That's it, right? And it's simple as, like, let's just take away the whole need to figure out the response and ask things that just require a yes and no. Or actually don't even require their response. Wipe the snow off their car.
Right. I'm gonna go do it. Just do it. Just go mow the lawn. Just go rake the leaves.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm going to the park. Do you mind if I come by and grab the dog? I'm going to the park. Do you mind if I come and grab your wee one? Right. Like very, very just, this is what I'm doing. Come and just say yes or no. And in my opinion, hear no 1,000 times. And it's not about you.
Right. Yes.
Let them say no to you. I wish people heard no 1,000 times. Right. Keep asking. Be annoying. I don't want to be a burden. Right. I know they're going through a tough time. You are never a burden if you are supporting.
Right.
Yeah, one of the big things we hear all the time is, especially in, grief that lingers, right, is, oh, everyone was around for, the first year, and year 2, like crickets, like tumbleweeds going by, right? So this idea of actually being supportive means action.
Yeah. I love that. We hear from teams sometimes that they feel like they find out late, right? Or well after an initial grief event occurs. And sometimes they say things like, well, oh, we should have seen that. Or as people are working with teams day in and day out, they're potentially missing signals, right? How can they keep their how can leaders keep their almost like their antenna up to recognize when teammates might be struggling specifically with grief?
It really means, and it's tied to the bereavement leave, right?
Mhm.
I am a huge fan of check-ins,
Mhm.
of accommodations, right? And very simple, right? Like as an example, we have a very diverse country, and in this diverse country, I would say a big part of our workforce needs to travel home to funerals,
Mhm.
right? So 3 days ain't gonna cut it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we know they have to travel. We know that they've come from another country and are here trying to make the best of their lives, of lives of the people at home. We know that they're financially strapped,
Mhm.
right? And in fact, those two things, time and money, are the problem we all
Mhm.
face inside of our lives, but nothing is more true um, than those stressors
Mhm.
in a loss. So those, from an organization perspective, I think we need to take a better look at how we can support people through that. And a lot of
Mhm.
times that's through, advances in pay, or it's in, just using some of those health wallets sometimes help.
Mhm.
But also accommodation. You can work from home for the next month or whatever it needs to be in order to take care of your loved ones. But so those from an organizational perspective, and the check-ins. So I, in the Leading Through Loss program, have a checklist. So
Mhm.
the leader prints out a checklist and says, okay, so it says here I need to book like 3 meetings with you, and there are these quarters,
Mhm.
and we're going to do a bit of a check-in. That, in my mind, gives some structure to
Mhm.
it so that people
Sure.
know what to expect. One of the things that I found that works really well is, when they're on leave, is recording all of your team calls. Um, Often people come back into an organization that is like a totally different company, right?
Sure.
We
Right.
move at the speed of sound,
Mhm.
right? And they come back from a 2 weeks leave, as an example, and they have no idea what's going on.
Mm. Mhm.
And that needs to change. So how we
Mhm.
support people in returning to work is important.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because in our surveys and our interviews and our conversations, that the way companies receive people, the way the way that their teammates cross functionally or wherever people they interact with at work, the way they are received back is a constant um, data point that people share. And it's usually not good. Sometimes it's fantastic and it's a great response, usually because they have some informed manager that understands it. But as you think about receiving a teammate back from bereavement leave specifically, can you walk through some tips for leaders
Yeah.
as they welcome those people back from those leaves of absence?
Well, I think the key point is to always be a touch point.
Hmm.
So I take a little bit of a more constant approach. When I consult with companies, I like the idea of recording Zoom calls while they're away, right, and sending them the links while they're off. And a good example of why is because as with many people, you need breaks from family,
Hmm.
and I am okay if I have to blame my company for why I need a break. Oh, there's this meeting. I just have to go take a look at these notes, right?
Hmm.
I'm sorry, it's a call. They just can't live without me. That kind of little bit of I'm okay being an excuse,
Hmm.
right? So that we can take care of them. We can build that boundary around them a little bit. And those Zoom recordings that come up into their email, are actually sometimes a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we need to post them as that, right? And I've had lots of teammates send little notes inside of the Zoom recording, just say, hey, Anne, we're thinking of you and we know this is important to you. So let us know if anything comes up, but this is how we're going to go ahead, right? So these real personal messages inside the Zoom recording that they have access to and can use as an excuse, I think is a really cool thing to do while people are on bereavement leave. I like preparing people to come back into work. So what you're going to tell people that you trust, that you don't trust, and that you're kind of in the middle of trusting. And let's just prepare a little bit before you come back. So giving our employees those tools. And the last thing is really setting employees or teams up so that there's shadow work happening. We always take notes, as an example, of our meetings so that people have the information in email. And we do that specifically. We could what do they call that? Shadow people, right? So that there's always someone that is in the background willing to kind of support and help and remind, perhaps.
Sure.
Another really interesting thing that I heard when I was on a podcast with a fine gentleman, and he indicated that when he lost his partner, he had gotten the news in a particular boardroom at work. And his boss made the effort and said to him, we will never book meetings in that room until you tell us it's okay to.
Oh, wow.
Whole team would never book meetings in that room.
Because that was the newsroom.
That was the newsroom. Yeah.
Wow.
These little tiny things, they don't sound like they're really big things, right? But they're so deeply meaningful.
Sure.
As long as we center the person at the center of our care, as long as they are the hub of our care, we can get work done and done successfully.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. We those little touches, and we talk a lot about scaling the personal touches through some of the work that we do. But those little touches become really, really critical and are done in so many other areas of the business and throughout the workday. But they just kind of stop here, right? And we end up with this what we refer to as random acts of bereavement support. It's like you got your manager to kind of help, maybe if they know what they're doing in this particular instance, and you have a little bit of support from HR, and you got this policy somewhere that nobody can find. And then, oh, by the way, there's an EAP. If you go into our intranet, there's this link that you could find that gives you 3 free grief sessions. Like all well-intentioned, just not deeply thought through. And the little touches that you're talking about, especially things like, not scheduling a meeting in a specific room, like those are really, really thoughtful things that can lead to a ton of loyalty. I'm sure from people going through this. Matt has a question. Can you speak to those who return to work and want to be task focused, not share feelings? Like, I think I understand what he's saying. Are you interpreting that?
Yeah, I totally get it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to speak to it, if it's okay, as someone who is quite extroverted versus someone who is quite introverted, right?
Sure.
And a lot of times introversion is misinterpreted as not caring, right? So I think just a lesson on what it means to be an introvert is really important inside of emotional situations, right? A lot of times they want to think things through. They need space and time to think things through. So when we want to work with and be much closer and much more and spend much more time in the detail, often you can shift projects so that they are the note taker inside of meetings. They are responsible for the spreadsheets. They're responsible for the data. and you can kind of shift a little bit of the roles and the responsibilities around so that they do get to focus a little bit more on tasks. Now that's in jobs that are very project oriented, right? But you can highlight some of those responsibilities and have them take those roles. I think the important thing for people that are a little bit more introvert or wanted to stay a little bit more task focused is that they still know the support is available.
Right.
Because people need to know it's there. It doesn't mean they need to use it. And I think that's the most important part of respecting everybody's different grief experience, right?
Sure.
Is that we don't need you to tell us all your feelings. We just need to know that we are here. That's it. And we're going to check in, right? So that would be my response to that.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks, Matt, for the question. So we talked a little bit about the companies that kind of get it and are starting to get it, a little bit more progressive, and the ones that don't. This conversation is hard to get started at a company, especially if you're not sitting at that table, right, in the boardroom. Can you talk a little bit about if I'm a leader at a company and HR, maybe I'm in HR, maybe I'm a manager of people and I'm not at that seat, how can I start to get this conversation moving internally if it's something that I care about?
Be it, right? So for example, that manager that said to the employee, no one books meetings with you in this room until you're ready. Who doesn't want to work for somebody like that? Right? You can just imagine that working for somebody that comes up with that initiative on their own, has probably had their own grief experience, has probably experienced some of the things we talked about, the isolation, the guilt, the shame, and has put this in place because she knows or he knows, right? That, in my mind, is where it starts. And being the change you want to see is important. And I think that's the first place you start. Let's be honest, like Justin, this is a practice, right? Sure. And we sit inside of it and we're going to try something and we're like, oh, I don't know if that was good. And we go, okay, let's shift it this way. And we try. There's no one way to do this because everyone's experience is different, right? And I would also say the other thing that leaders can do to kind of push this along, the agenda along, is when we talk about a DEI program, when we talk about the culture of an organization, fit in this lens of what does it mean when people go through a grief experience? What does that actually mean? And when people start assigning this to the numbers and the stats and the KPIs, right? There's stats and there's things to back that up too. So you can have those conversations for sure. But it should really be around this idea of building grief inclusivity, not about just the numbers. So we can say, yes, the numbers matter, and the numbers will be affected by being able to actually live our culture inside of hard things. Because if we can't do it when it's hard, what gives us the right to do it when it's good?
Ooh, I love that. That's great. Let's talk because you're doing this every day, and I would love to hear from you on some of the kind of along those lines, some of the trends you are seeing that are motivating you to continue down this path. Anything out there that stands out from a trend perspective in the right direction?
I think people are starting to get. I feel like as far as the trend is concerned, I think one of the most important pieces of it is that it affects actually everyone, right? So, and I'm going to put the business hat on again a little bit, but this idea that we can actually see a DEI project that can affect and incorporate and be part of everyone's life allows everyone to belong And I hold that with very gentle hands, right? Because I think all DEI projects do that. Good ones do.
Sure.
Right. But I think that we're in a situation right now where we are leaving people behind. And one of the most important aspects of this is that we're doing this internally. And people inside of companies, leaders, are starting to see that it's actually a company thing, not necessarily just an EAP thing.
Sure.
Right? The moment we send someone off to EAP, we've done what for the relationship, for that belonging, for being inclusive? We've done nothing. We've told them to go somewhere else with their problems. Right? And I'm saying, no, leader, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, here are things that you can do to make this inclusive every day. So that, I think, is probably the most important trend, is that we take that internally and we hold onto that as part of our job as a good leader.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Love hearing that. Sarah, this has been incredible. You've done an outstanding job sharing, and really, really grateful for your generosity in doing this. Very much appreciate it. Everybody that's looking for a SHRM credit, the ID is going to be posted on the screen here. We'll add it to our follow-up as well. We're going to be back actually in 2 weeks on the 3rd with actually one of the commenters today, Matt Trotsky. He's a people ops leader that spent nearly a decade in outdoor education, then as a wildlife firefighter, and over 20 years then working in ski resort towns. He's got some incredible stories and experiences supporting people through loss at work, including supporting folks through 2 triple fatalities of employees. His navigation of an avalanche response at Stevens Pass, Washington, is highly regarded as and has been used as a standard of quality of response in an industry. And we'll talk with Matt about his perspective and experiences. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about Bereave and how we can help you support your teammates through their toughest moments, give us a shout. But Sarah Hines, thank you so much for being here and the incredible work that you're doing.
Thanks so much. I look forward to cheering you on.
Ditto. Until then, everybody, thanks for being here. We'll talk soon.